Boston's autumn morning wrapped Sarah Mitchell in a chilly embrace as she stepped off the T at Park Street Station. Her faded sneakers crunching through crimson and gold leaves scattered across the uneven cobblestones leading to Beacon Hill. At 26, Sarah carried the weight of a life derailed. Her once bright dream of becoming a pediatric nurse buried under the rubble of her father's sudden heart attack 3 years prior. The loss had shattered her family, leaving her mother, Laura, battling heart disease and a fog of grief, while her 16-year-old sister, Emily, clung to her sketchbooks, dreaming of art school despite their crumbling finances. Sarah had traded lecture halls for late-night diner shifts and early morning cleaning gigs, her hazel eyes still holding a stubborn spark of hope, though it flickered against the exhaustion of keeping her family afloat. A friend from her old hospital internship had called 2 nights ago, voice low and urgent, offering a lifeline, a nanny job for a wealthy family's 5-year-old daughter, Lily Harper, who hadn't spoken or walked since her mother's death in a car crash 2 years ago. "It's not your dream job," the friend admitted, "but it pays enough to cover rent and maybe more. You're a natural with people." Sarah doubt-gnawed at her. She wasn't trained for this, had never cared for a child so deeply wounded, but the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter and Emily's hopeful eyes pushed her to agree. Clutching a worn denim bag with a peanut butter sandwich, a dog-eared resume, and a whispered prayer, Sarah navigated Boston's historic streets, the city's pulse both familiar and indifferent. Beacon Hill loomed ahead, a world of polished brownstones, wrought iron fences, and lampposts glowing softly in the morning mist. A place so far removed from her Dorchester apartment that it felt like stepping into a painting. The Harper mansion stood like a sentinel at the end of a quiet street, its tall windows reflecting the grey sky, its brick facade exuding wealth but no warmth. Sarah smoothed her second-hand coat, her heart pounding as she pressed the buzzer, feeling like a sparrow at the gates of a castle. The door opened to reveal Margaret Harper, a silver-haired woman with a kind smile and eyes that seemed to see through Sarah's frayed exterior to the strength beneath. The foyer smelled of lemon, polish and old money, but the air was heavy, as if the house itself mourned. Margaret led Sarah through marble corridors, adorned with abstract art, each piece worth more than her family's yearly rent, to a sitting room where James Harper stood, his tailored suit and sharp jawline screaming authority. At 35, the tech mogul was a fortress of control, his dark eyes shadowed with a grief that struck Sarah like a mirror to her own family's pain. He barely acknowledged her, his voice cold as he outlined duties with mechanical precision, already dismissing her. As another fleeting hire, Margaret's gentle insistence cut through his skepticism, urging Sarah to meet Lily before any judgments were made. They ascended a grand staircase to a nursery that looked like a child's dream, brimming with plush toys, a sparkling chandelier, and a canopy bed draped in soft pink. Yet it felt more like a museum than a home. In the center, on a woven rug, sat Lily, a fragile girl with pale blue eyes and chestnut curls, clutching a stuffed owl, her gaze fixed on a window as if searching for something lost beyond the glass. Sarah's chest tightened. Lily's silence wasn't just quiet. It was a scream trapped in stillness, a wound so raw it echoed her mother's sleepless nights and Emily's hidden tears. Kneeling a few feet away, Sarah whispered a soft hello, her voice trembling with the weight of her own losses and a sudden fierce resolve to reach this child. James lingered at the door, arms crossed, his doubt a palpable wall. But Sarah felt a spark ignite within her, a determination not just to earn a paycheck, but to bridge the chasm of grief separating Lily from the world. She thought of her father's last words to her: "Keep going, kiddo, you're stronger than you." No, Anne knew she couldn't walk away, not from this girl, not from this chance to heal a heart so like her own. Sarah stood in the Harper mansion's cavernous foyer, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished marble as Margaret guided her toward a sleek glass elevator, its hum the only sound in the oppressive quiet. The weight of James Harper's dismissive glance lingered, his clipped words "stick to the schedule, don't overstep," going like a warning in her mind. But Sarah's thoughts were already with Lily, the silent girl whose pale eyes held a grief too heavy for her small frame. Margaret's voice, warm and steady, broke through her reverie, explaining Lily's routine with a tenderness that felt like a lifeline in this cold, opulent world. James, a 35-year-old tech mogul who built his empire on predictive algorithms, stood by a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Boston's skyline, his broad shoulders rigid, his face a mask of control hiding the cracks of a man broken by his wife Clara's death 2 years ago. Sarah saw the pain in his tight jaw, the way his fingers twitched as if grasping for something lost, and it stirred a pang of recognitions. She knew that look from her mother's face after her father's funeral, when the world seemed to stop. Turning, Margaret, with her silver hair swept into a neat bun and eyes that sparkled with quiet wisdom, led Sarah to a sunlit hallway lined with family photos, Clara laughing with Lily on a beach, James softer then, his smile unguarded. The images felt like ghosts, their joy a stark contrast to the mansion's sterile present. In the nursery, Lily sat unchanged, her stuffed owl clutched tightly, her gaze fixed on the window as if the autumn leaves outside held answers to her. Silence. Sarah's heart ached. She saw her sister Emily in Lily's stillness, the way Emily would sketch for hours to escape their family's grief. Kneeling beside Lily, Sarah offered a gentle smile, her voice soft as she introduced herself, promising stories and games, but Lily's eyes didn't waver, locked on a world beyond the glass. James appeared at the door, his presence heavy, his voice sharp as he outlined Lily's needs meals at precise times. No unnecessary risks, no emotional nonsense. His words stung, but Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. She wasn't here just for money, but for the girl who mirrored her own buried pain. Margaret stepped in, her hand on Sarah's shoulder, suggesting James return to his office while she showed Sarah the kitchen and Lily's favorite toys. As James retreated, his footsteps echoing down the hall, Sarah felt the weight of his distrust, but Margaret's warm glance steadied her. She was an ally in this unfamiliar terrain. The kitchen, all gleaming stainless steel and granite, felt more like a showroom than a home, but Sarah noticed a small hand-painted mug on the counter, its chipped edge a relic of a warmer past, likely Clara's. Margaret shared snippets of Lily's life before the accident, her giggles, her love for dancing to Clara's piano tunes, her voice cracking with love and loss. Sarah listened, her chest tightening, imagining her own family's laughter before her father's death stole it. She thought of her mother's untouched knitting needles, Emily's sketches piling up unsent to art schools, and vowed to bring some light back to this house, starting with Lily. Margaret handed Sarah a binder of schedules, but her eyes said more. Trust your heart, not just the rules. Alone with Lily later, Sarah sat cross-legged on the rug, pulling a worn storybook from her bag, one her father used to read to her about a brave rabbit finding its way home. She read softly, her voice a gentle hum, not expecting a response but hoping Lily felt her presence. James reappeared briefly, his eyes narrowing as he saw the book, muttering about sticking to approved activities before vanishing again. Sarah's cheeks burned, but she kept reading, her voice steady, sensing Lily's stillness wasn't rejection but a wall built from fear. As the afternoon faded, sunlight slanting through the nursery's windows, Sarah noticed Lily's fingers twitched around her owl, a tiny sign of awareness. Her heart leapt. She knew traumas gripped, how it locked her mother in silence for months, and she felt a fierce need to reach Lily, to prove healing was possible. Margaret returned, offering a cup of chamomile tea, her smile an unspoken encouragement. Sarah sipped it, the warmth grounding her, and shared a quiet story of her father teaching her to plant daisies, a memory that always anchored her. Margaret listened, her eyes misting, and whispered that Clara had loved gardening too, filling their old home with roses. The connection, small but real, felt like a bridge between their losses. As Sarah prepared to leave, she glanced back at Lily, still silent, still staring, but her owl was now tucked closer, a faint shift that whispered hope. James passed by, his gaze avoiding hers, but Sarah caught a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or fear in his eyes. She stepped into the crisp Boston evening, the city's lights twinkling like distant stars, her heart heavy but determined. This job wasn't just about survival, it was about finding a way to heal, not just for Lily, but for herself. Sarah woke to the soft patter of rain against her Dorchester apartment window, the grey dawn mirroring the ache in her chest as she thought of Lily Harper, the silent girl whose pale blue eyes haunted her dreams. Her first week in the Beacon Hill mansion had been a tightrope walk, balancing James's cold directives with her instinct to reach the child trapped in a cage of grief. She slipped on her coat, grabbed her denim bag, now holding a few sensory toys from her nursing school, days, and headed to the tea. the city's damp streets blurring past as she steeled herself for another day in a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. In the nursery, Lily sat, as always, her stuffed owl clutched tightly, her gaze fixed on the rain-streaked window. But Sarah noticed a subtle shift. Lily's fingers traced the owl's worn fur, a small sign of presence. Drawing on her training, Sarah began with gentle routines, humming a lullaby her father used to sing, its melody soft as a whisper, filling the room with warmth the mansion lacked. She placed a textured fabric square from her bag near Lily, not pushing, just letting the child notice its bright colors. Lily's eyes flicked toward it, a fleeting glance, but it sparked hope in Sarah's heart, a reminder of her mother's first smile after months of mourning. James's presence loomed, his footsteps sharp as he passed the nursery door, his voice cutting through on a phone call about stock margins, oblivious to the quiet battle for his daughter's spirit. Sarah ignored the sting of his indifference, focusing on Lily, reading a poem about a dancing starfish, her voice playful, mimicking the waves. Lily's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but enough to make Sarah's pulse quicken. She introduced a soft chime toy, its gentle ring blending with the rain's rhythm, and Lily's fingers paused, as if listening. Margaret appeared mid-morning, her silver hair catching the dim light, offering a plate of oatmeal cookies and a knowing nod that urged Sarah to keep going. Over coffee, Margaret shared a memory of Clara teaching Lily to clap to nursery rhymes, her voice thick with longing, and Sarah felt the weight of their shared loss. Her own memories of her father's laughter surfacing like bubbles in still water. She confided in Margaret about her paused nursing dreams, how she'd once imagined helping children heal, and Margaret's hand squeezed hers, a silent promise of support. But James's skepticism flared later that day, when he found Sarah using a sensory board, its textured patches meant to engage Lily's senses. "What is this?" he snapped, his voice low but sharp, accusing her of playing doctor. Sarah stood her ground, her voice steady despite the heat in her cheeks, explaining how tactile stimulation could awaken Lily's dormant responses. Drawing on her nursing studies, James's eyes darkened, his grief twisted into anger. Hired the best specialists, spent thousands, and nothing worked. Who was she to think she could do better? The words cut, but Sarah saw the fear behind them, the same fear she'd felt when her mother stopped eating after her father's death. She replied softly, "I'm not trying to fix her, Mr. Harper. I'm just trying to reach her." He stormed out, leaving a chill in the air, and Sarah's hands trembled as she tucked the sensory board away, doubting herself for the first time. Lily, sensing the tension, curled tighter around her owl, her eyes returning to the window. Sarah's heart sank, but she knelt beside the girl, whispering, "It's okay, we'll try again tomorrow." That evening, alone in the kitchen, Sarah washed Lily's sippy cup, the routine grounding her as she fought tears. Margaret found her, offering a quiet story about James before the accident, how he'd build sandcastles with Lily, his laughter filling their old seaside cottage. "He's lost," Margaret said, "but you're waking something in this house." Sarah nodded, her resolve reigniting. She'd faced her own family's darkness, and she wouldn't abandon Lily to hers. The next day, she brought a small music box, its tinkling notes a gift from her father, and played it softly, watching Lily's fingers twitch in rhythm. She sang along, her voice a gentle thread weaving through the nursery's silence, and Lily's eyes met hers for a full second, a connection as fragile as a spider's web, but real. James passed by, pausing unnoticed at the door, his expression unreadable. But Sarah didn't see him. She was lost in Lily's gaze, feeling the first cracks in the girl's silent wall. As she left that evening, the rain had stopped, and Boston's skyline glowed under a crescent moon. Sarah thought of Emily's latest sketch, a vibrant butterfly, and promised herself to keep fighting. Not just for Lily, but for the part of herself that still believed in healing. The rain had given way to a fragile Boston sunlight, filtering through the nursery's tall windows and casting golden flecks across the cream-colored rug where Sarah Mitchell sat with Lily Harper, her heart buoyed by the girl's small signs of progressor, fleeting glance, a twitch of fingers to the music box's tune. Sarah's days in the Harper mansion had settled into a rhythm of quiet persistence, each moment with Lily a step toward, piercing the veil of her silence, though James Harper's icy skepticism still hung like a storm cloud. That afternoon, with the city humming beyond the glass, Sarah decided to try something new, Inspired by a nursing school lesson on play therapy, she spread a soft blanket on the floor, arranging a circle of stuffed animals, Lily's owl at the center, and set out tiny plastic teacups, her voice lilting as she narrated a whimsical tea party for a bear, a rabbit, and a very shy owl. Lily sat as always, her pale blue eyes fixed on the window, but Sarah caught her stealing glances at the scene, her small hands tightening around her owl. Humming a playful tune, Sarah balanced a teacup on her head, wobbling dramatically until it fell with a soft thud, her exaggerated groan drawing a faint, almost imperceptible curve to Lily's lips. Sarah's heart leaped, but she kept her movements slow, her voice gentle, inviting Lily without pushing. In her bag, she'd brought a small bell from her nursing kit, its chime bright but soft, and she rang it lightly, pretending it was the owl's doorbell. Lily's eyes flicked toward the sound, lingering longer than before, and Sarah felt a spark of hope, like the first green shoot after a long winter. Unseen, James stood at the nursery door, drawn by a sound he hadn't heard in 2 years, a soft, breathy giggle, so delicate it seemed to hover in the air. His breath caught as he peered inside, seeing Sarah sprawled on the blanket, now juggling 2 teacups with more clumsiness, while Lily, his silent daughter, lay beside her, shoulders shaking with a second, clearer laugh. The sight hit James like a wave, cracking the armor he'd built since Clara's death, stirring a mix of joy and guilt that burned behind his eyes. He stepped back, heart pounding, unable to enter, as if crossing the threshold would make the moment too real, too fragile to trust. In his office, surrounded by monitors and spreadsheets, he sat motionless, the echo of Lily's giggle louder than any boardroom deal. Sarah, unaware of his presence, continued the tea party, her voice weaving stories of a brave owl who learned to fly again, her words chosen to mirror Lily's journey without forcing her to feel it. As the afternoon faded, Margaret joined them, her silver hair glowing in the soft light, her smile warm as she watched Lily's eyes follow Sarah's movements. Over a shared cup of tea in the kitchen, Margaret confided in Sarah about James's pain, how Clara's death had turned him from a man who danced with his daughter to one who hid behind work, afraid to fail Lily again. Sarah nodded, her thoughts drifting to her own mother's withdrawal, how she'd learned to coax her back with small acts of love. She shared a memory of baking cookies with her father, the scent of vanilla filling their tiny apartment, and Margaret's eyes misted, recognizing the shared thread of loss binding them. That evening, as Sarah packed her bag, James appeared, his tie loosened, his face raw with something unspoken. His voice was low, almost breaking, as he said, "Sarah, I'm sorry for how I've treated you. I saw you with Lily today, and I heard her laugh. She hasn't done that since Clara." Sarah's breath caught, her eyes meeting his, seeing not the cold mogul but a father drowning in fear. "I was wrong to push you away," he continued, his words halting. "I'm scared, Sarah, scared I can't help her. She deserves better than me." Sarah's heart ached, recognizing the same guilt she'd carried when she couldn't ease her mother's pain. She spoke softly. "You're her father, Mr. Harper. She needs you, and I'm here to help, not to replace you." James looked at her, his defenses crumbling, and extended a hand, a gesture of trust that felt like a seismic shift. Sarah took it, her grip firm, feeling the weight of his vulnerability and the spark of a new alliance. As she left the mansion, the Boston night air felt lighter, the stars brighter, and Sarah knew something had changed, not just for Lily, but for all of them. She thought of her sister Emily's latest sketch, a bird breaking free from a cage, and felt a quiet resolve to keep pushing, to help this fractured family find its way back to life. The Boston skyline shimmered under a late October dusk as Sarah Mitchell stepped into the Harper mansion, her denim bag heavier with new hope and a few art supplies she'd borrowed from Emily's collection, inspired by Lily's faint giggles at the tea party. The nursery, once a silent shrine, now hummed with subtle life. Lily's owl sat propped against a pillow, and a faint crayon mark on the rug hinted at her growing presence. Sarah's heart swelled at these small victories, but James's apology, raw and unguarded, had shifted something deeper, forging a fragile trust that made the mansion feel less like a battlefield. She began the morning with a new activity, spreading a large sheet of butcher paper across the floor and setting out washable paints, her voice gentle as she invited Lily to make a picture for her owl. Lily's pale blue eyes flickered with curiosity, her fingers hesitating before dipping into the blue paint, smearing a shaky streak across the paper mark of courage that made Sarah's breath catch. She praised Lily softly, never pushing, and soon the girl was dabbing colors with quiet focus, her owl tucked beside her like a loyal guardian. James, who'd begun lingering near the nursery instead of retreating to his office, watched from the hallway, his tie loosened, his face softer but still etched with the weight of years lost to grief. Sarah caught his gaze and offered a small nod, a silent invitation to join, but he hesitated, his hands fidgeting as if unsure how to cross the divide to his daughter. Margaret, ever the quiet orchestrator, brought in a tray of apple slices, her smile encouraging James to stay, and he finally sat, awkwardly picking up a paintbrush and adding a wobbly sun to Lily's masterpiece. The moment felt sacred, a family stitching itself back together. And Sarah's thoughts drifted to her own family, her mother's recent laughter over Emily's goofy sketches, a sign of healing she hadn't dared hope for. As days passed, James's presence grew steadier. He'd come home early, his laptop forgotten, to build block towers with Lily, his deep laugh mingling with her soft hums when a tower toppled. Sarah saw the man he'd been before, Clara's deather father. Not a Mogoland, it stirred a warmth in her chest, a feeling she pushed aside to focus on Lily. One crisp afternoon, as leaves swirled outside, Sarah suggested a bold step. A pediatric therapist in Portland, Maine, known for blending art and music to unlock traumas. Grip. She'd read about Dr. Lena Chen in a nursing journal, her methods sparking hope in cases like Lily's. James's eyes clouded with doubt. He'd seen countless specialists, each one a dead end, but Sarah's steady voice, recounting Lily's progress with paints and songs, softened his resistance. "What if this is different?" she asked, her hand brushing his arm, the touch unintentional but electric. He nodded, his voice quiet. "Let's try." For Lily, the decision felt like a leap, and Sarah's heart raced with both fear and possibility. A week later, they boarded a small plane to Portland, Lily clutching her owl, James's hand steadying her, as Sarah carried a bag of familiar toys to ease the transition. The Maine coast greeted them with salty air and gulls soaring overhead, a stark contrast to Boston's rigid lines. Dr. Chen's clinic, nestled among pines, was warm and unpretentious, its walls covered with children's drawings and soft guitar music drifting through. The therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a calm presence, knelt to Lily's level, offering a paintbrush instead of words, and Sarah saw Lily's shoulders relax, a trust forming that hadn't with other doctors. Dr. Chen confirmed what Sarah suspected. Lily's silence and immobility were trauma's armor, not a physical defect, and with time, art and connection, she could heal. James listened, his jaw tight, but his eyes glistening, and Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for his willingness to try. Over the next days, they settled into a rhythm at the clinic. Lily painted vibrant swirls, her hands steadier, while Sarah and James sat nearby, their conversations deepening. One evening, walking along Portland's rocky shore, the sunset painting the sky in pinks and golds, James spoke of Clara, her love for painting, her habit of singing off-key to make Lily laugh. His voice broke, and Sarah listened, her own grief surfacing as she shared how her father's death had stolen her dreams of nursing. The waves crashed softly, and their hands brushed, a fleeting connection that left Sarah's heart pounding. Back at the clinic, Lily began to hum along with Dr. Chun's guitar, her small voice a whisper of sound that brought tears to Sarah's eyes and a rare smile to James's face. Each tiny step, Lily reaching for a crayon, swaying to music like a miracle, and Sarah saw James transform, his guarded walls crumbling as he clapped for Lily's efforts, his pride brighter than any boardroom victory. The Portland trip, though brief, wove a thread of hope through their fractured lives, and Sarah felt a quiet bond forming not just with Lily, but with James, a man learning to live again. The Portland sky glowed with the soft amber of a late autumn afternoon, as Sarah Mitchell spread a checkered blanket across a grassy park near Dr. Chen's clinic, the scent of pine and earth mingling with the distant salt of the Maine coast. Lily Harper, clutching her stuffed owl, sat between Sarah and James, her pale blue eyes brighter than they'd been in Boston, catching the light of kites dancing against the horizon. The trip had woven a fragile magic. Lee's hums had grown steadier, her small hands now reaching for paintbrushes with purpose, and James, once a shadow of control, now knelt beside her, tying a tiny braid in her chestnut curls with clumsy care. Sarah's heart swelled at the sight, her own grief softened by the warmth of these moments. Though she pushed away the flutter in her chest when James's gaze lingered on her, his eyes no longer cold but searching. Today, Dr. Chen had suggested an outdoor session, a chance for Lily to feel the world beyond the clinic's walls. Sarah set up a low table with watercolor paints, her voice gentle as she invited Lily to create a picture of the sky. Lily dipped her brush, her strokes hesitant but bold, painting a swirl of blue and yellow that mirrored the sunset. James, sitting cross-legged, added a lopsided cloud, his laugh soft when Lily flicked paint onto his sleeve, her giggle a clear, bell-like sound that stopped Sarah's breath. It was the first time Lily had laughed so freely, and Sarah's eyes met James's, both shimmering with unspoken joy. Dr. Chen, watching from a distance, nodded encouragingly. Her notes confirming Lily's progress was real. Her body was waking. As her heart began to heal, Sarah suggested a game, holding Lily's hands and guiding her to stand on the grass, her voice a playful whisper about dancing with the wind. Lily's legs wobbled, but she leaned into Sarah, her owl tucked under one arm, and took a trembling step, then another, her face lighting up with a smile that seemed to hold all the colors of the sky. James froze, his breath hitching, and Sarah gasped, her hands steadying Lily as the girl stumbled into her arms, giggling. The moment felt like time itself paused, the park's sounds fading to a hush as Lily looked at Sarah and whispered, "Sarah," her voice small but clear, the first word she'd spoken in years. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, not just for the step, but for the trust in Lily's eyes, a trust that echoed the love she'd once felt from her father. James dropped to his knees, wrapping them both in a fierce embrace, his own tears falling as he murmured, "My little girl, you're coming back to me." The three of them sat there, tangled in the blanket, the sunset casting a warm glow over their joined hands, a family forged not by blood but by shared healing. Back in Boston, the Harper mansion no longer felt like a tomb. Lily's watercolor paintings hung on the fridge, and her soft hums filled the hallways, a melody of hope. James surprised Sarah with a folder one evening, his voice steady but warm, offering her a scholarship through his company to resume her nursing studies, a thank you for giving Lily back her light. Sarah's throat tightened, her dream suddenly within reach, but it was James's next words that stopped her heart. He led her to a cozy suburban house just outside Boston, its white porch framed by lavender bushes, a home he'd bought for Lily to grow up in, away from the mansion's sterile wait. As Lily ran through the garden, chasing a butterfly and calling "Owl, look," James turned to Sarah, his hands trembling as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Sarah," he said, his voice raw, "I'm not asking because I owe you. I'm asking because you've shown me how to live again, how to love again. Will you be Lily's mother and my partner for all the days we have left?" Sarah's breath caught, her mind flashing to her own family, her mother's slow recovery, Emily's art school acceptance, and the life she'd thought lost. She knelt beside Lily, who grinned and hugged her, then turned to James, tears in her eyes but a smile breaking through. "I've been her mother for a while now," she whispered, "and yours too, in my heart." She took his hand, nodding, and the ring slid onto her finger, simple and perfect. That evening, they sat on the porch, Lily nestled between them, humming a tune from Portland, the lavender scent wrapping them in quiet peace. The stars above Boston blinked like promises, and Sarah felt her father's presence in the breeze, whispering, "You kept going, kiddo." Their story wasn't a fairy tale, but a tapestry of pain and hope, woven with small, brave choices to love through loss.